I'm Emily Chang, and this is the best of Bloomberg Technology, where we bring you all our top interviews from this week in tech. The inside track on Travis Kalanick's future and Uber's bumpy year from one of the startup's most prominent board members. My exclusive interview with Arianna Huffington from the WSJ D-Live Tech Conference in Laguna Beach, California. Plus, we sit down with Facebook's head of Messenger, David Marcus, to find out how he plans to make it the default messaging app. And after a summer of disappointments at the U.S. box office, Disney doubles down on fantasy. Why CEO Bob Iger believes a superhero showdown, a musical animation, and The Force will pack theaters this fall. But first, to our lead. This week, we brought you Bloomberg Technology from the WSJ D-Live Technology Conference in Laguna Beach, where we spoke with some of the biggest names in tech. Let's kick it off with my conversation with Thrive CEO and Uber board member Arianna Huffington. We started by talking about Uber's volatile year and the changing role of Travis Kalanick.
He is on the board, and he's very active. He obviously built Uber to the juggernaut that it is now, and he passed the baton on to Dara. He was the one who introduced Dara at the All Hands when he took over as CEO, and it was a very nice transition of power. And Dara has been amazing at dealing with all the problems, whether it's what's happening in London with the suspension of Uber's license, or the deal that is in process, we hope, with SoftBank. He has been a great leader, confident and willing to show humility in appropriate times, and very committed to building a thriving culture as well as a thriving company.
You mentioned the situation that Uber is facing in London, multiple legal probes elsewhere. What approach do you hope to see Dara take to regulation and the law, really, around the world going forward?
Well, as he said himself in a very beautiful open letter to Londoners, we need to do better at serving the communities where Uber exists around the world. We need to make sure that we add value to communities beyond the value we already add in terms of mobility, in terms of jobs, which is not at all to be underestimated, but we need to also be there for the people we serve, starting with drivers. Mm-hmm. You know, the launch of 180 days of change, which started with allowing tipping for drivers, was intended to rebuild the relationship with drivers.
Would you say that the fractiousness that we saw from the outside on the board is changing, that the board is coming together?
The board is in a good place at the moment. We are now 11, we've grown, and if the SoftBank deal goes through, there are new governance measures that are going to be put in place, which include additional independent board members, an independent chair. All these things are really going to make sure that Uber has a world-class governance ahead of the IPO, which now we are aiming will be before 2019.
And we understand that you became a really close confidant of Travis's as he went through this and the company went through this. What's your relationship with Travis like now?
Travis is a friend, and I'm really excited to see his own journey. You know, he's only 41. He has a lot of life ahead of him, and I look forward to see what he's going to do.
We mentioned Harvey Weinstein earlier. There's a spotlight on sexual harassment, sexual assault, and how men can flagrantly and horrifically abuse their power. Companies still approach sexual harassment in confusing ways. How do we put clearer guardrails around what is tolerated, what is not, and what crosses the line?
I think there are two really important issues here. One is to end the cult of the top performer. You know, there is this cult both in Silicon Valley and in Hollywood and in many other places around the world, where if you are delivering results, if you are delivering great performance, a lot is forgiven you. And the other thing that is really important is for us to break the silence, because people see things and they don't say anything, especially if whoever is involved is someone in a powerful position. And we see that in politics also. I'd love to see more Republicans speaking out about what's happening at the White House. So breaking the silence before there are a few courageous people, like the courageous women who came forward in the Harvey Weinstein case, before it has to come to that point.
You mentioned politics. You speak about an inclusive culture at the same time that our own president seems to be very divisive. What are your biggest concerns now that we're 9 months into this administration?
Well, my biggest concern is that so few Republicans are speaking out. It was great to see Senator McCain last night speaking out. Of course, it's been great to see Senator Corker speaking out. But I think it's so much now up to Republicans, because this is not a partisan issue. It really involves the safety of the country, and we need Republicans, as well as Democrats, of course, but Republicans will have a lot more impact if they speak out about what is happening.
Facebook, Google, and Twitter are now having to answer to Congress about Russian meddling on their platform. What is the responsibility of these companies when it comes to foreign actors weaponizing, essentially, the tools that they create?
Well, as Sheryl Sandberg said to Mike Allen during their interview last week, it's very important to increase oversight. I mean, Facebook is hiring 4,000 additional people. They're investing more in machine learning to be able to catch, first of all, the creation of these fake accounts, because whatever you think of free speech, nobody wants to see fake accounts being started in order to interfere in our democracy. But I think there is another problem, which is what we are addressing at Thrive Global, which is in the attention economy. A lot of these companies have the incentive to hijack more and more of our attention. And we see that having incredible problems, especially when it comes to teenagers and college students. We saw the article in the New York Times over the weekend about the mental health problems among teenagers increasing dramatically.
So you're announcing a partnership this week with Samsung to turn a smartphone into a dumb phone. What do you mean by that?
So for specified periods of time, when you're having dinner with your family, when you're doing deep work, when you are sleeping, when you don't want to be interrupted, you'll be able to put your phone in what we call Thrive mode. And during that time, you will not be able to receive texts, notifications, calls. You will have a VIP list if you always need to get a call from a child or a spouse. You'll be able to do that. But the two important elements of the app are, one is bidirectional. So if you're in Thrive mode and I try to text you, I'll get that message back and will be told when you'll be out of Thrive mode. And also it will give you a mirror of your social media consumption. So it will tell you, you were on Instagram for 7 hours last week. Would you like to reduce the amount you spend on Instagram or whatever app? And if you decide to, let's say, reduce it to 6, it will give you notifications and then shut you out.
So what's the next step with Thrive? Where do you want to take this?
So Thrive is really two things. One is our work with corporations. You know, we go into companies, we work to improve their culture, improve outcomes in terms of both productivity and well-being. And also we are a media platform which increases awareness around these issues, both by bringing together the latest science and also new role models. There are a lot of people who actually are practicing taking care of themselves, recharging, and then are seeing the impact this has on their productivity and their performance.
That was Thrive CEO Arianna Huffington. Coming up, we will have more from Laguna Beach, including our conversation with Facebook VP of Messaging Products, David Marcus, how the social media giant plans to become the default messaging app next. This is Bloomberg. The This week, Bloomberg learned that Facebook is looking to hire employees who have U.S. security clearances, a move the company thinks is necessary to prevent foreign powers from manipulating future elections via Facebook. The company plans to use these people to search more proactively for questionable social media campaigns ahead of elections. Facebook declined to comment on this story. Sticking with Facebook, and one of the tech leaders in attendance at this year's WSJD conference was Facebook's VP of Messaging Platforms, David Marcus. Recruited personally by CEO Mark Zuckerberg, Marcus is credited with bringing person-to-person payments to the tech giant's Messenger products. I asked Marcus just how much revenue the company is driving into advertising.
We don't break out revenues for specific products, but what I can say is that it's still very, very early in the development of Messenger as a business for Facebook, but the early signs are promising. So basically, if you're a business and you build an experience inside of Messenger, and it's the right type of experience, and you redirect people from either a Facebook app, a Facebook ad, an Instagram ad, or now a Messenger ad into a conversation inside of Messenger, then you will increase ROI of your business objective. And so that's actually a very good sign that we'll be able to enable more and more businesses to create conversations with their customers and generate new revenues and basically grow their businesses. So I have tons of examples for you, but like a good one to share is, for instance, T-Mobile is now selling data plans and devices on Messenger, and they're seeing a 7x conversion increase as compared with traditional web experiences, because they kind of recreate the experience that you have in a store inside of Messenger with this conversational ability mixed with UI elements inside of Messenger conversation.
Now, competition, David, in the B2C chat space, though, is heating up. You've got Apple iMessage, Skype, even WhatsApp, which is in your own Facebook family, trying to own this relationship. How do you see Messenger standing out amidst the competition?
Well, you know, it's a very different, geographical split between different types of messaging apps. What we see is that WhatsApp is really strong in certain markets like Latin America, India, etc., and we're very strong in North America and Western and Central Europe and Philippines, Thailand, etc. But like, I think the one differentiation that Messenger has is really groups today. And when you create a group on Messenger, you're never seeing phone numbers. It's always identity, so you know exactly who you're talking to at any given point in time. You can send media really quickly. When you add a device, whether it's an Android or iPhone device, it works flawlessly regardless. And then you have all of these great chat extensions, whether it's creating a playlist with friends, with Apple Music or Spotify, or playing games or making plans. You can do all of these things much better on Messenger, and it's a key differentiator for us. So we're going to continue investing in groups and continue investing in real time. So you can, as you know, you can upgrade from texting to live video in groups, and it's a really delightful experience with augmented reality effects and all of these things. So we really feel that we have a key advantage here, and we're going to continue investing in it.
You've added new features like locations, polling, third-party experiences, Spotify. You mentioned the ability to, buy movie tickets on Fandango, share recipes from the Food Network. How are these new features actually driving user growth? What trends are you seeing?
Well, those types of experiences are actually driving engagement, because once you've had those types of experiences, then you tend to stick with Messenger and create more and more conversations on Messenger. And what we see is that when people actually get what they want, when we can infer intent from a conversation and actually leverage M to suggest the right thing at the right time, what we see is people are having a better experience, and they're sticking around on Messenger and creating more groups and one-on-one conversations.
With M, you're referencing AI technology. Some would say that Facebook seems to be a little behind when it comes to the AI game. Amazon, Alexa, Google Home, these are products that are already in people's homes. Do you think that Facebook and Facebook Messenger have some catching up to do here?
Well, I think we're having a very different approach here, because the current experience that you have with M that basically suggests things based on what you want to do in conversations is really popping up at the right time, and so as a result we tend to not disappoint when you have an intent that you want to complete, because we only surface suggestions when we feel pretty confident that this is what you want to do. And so the model that we've been working on right now is the one that we've been talking about with suggestions and conversations, and we're continuing to invest in bringing a more full-fledged assistant to market. We've been working on it for a while, but we really want to ship something that's very valuable and that won't let people down. It's really important. So this is one where we don't want to rush to market. We want to get it right, and once we'll get it right, we'll ship it to the 1.3 billion people on Messenger and counting.
Facebook, along with Google and Twitter, are going to be speaking before the House Intelligence Committee on November 1st about Russian meddling on the platform. David, what responsibility does Facebook bear here? What mistakes do you think were made?
Well, one thing that I want to say when those things come up is, lately we've been talking a lot about the responsibility of the platform. And clearly we have a great deal of responsibility given our reach. But I just want to highlight something, because we talk about all of the downsides of the platform, but we never talk about the upside of the platform. And this is something that I feel really passionate about. The number of people that connect with other people around the world that have an orphan disease like they have, and that can connect with them in ways that they can't even connect with friends and family. The fact that we've turned on safety check about 600 times since we launched it, and have like 1 billion notifications going to people to reassure them that everything is okay. The fact that we've raised $17 million for Harvey on the platform are things that we don't talk about. So there's so much goodness that comes from the platform. And of course, when we operate at this scale, there are things that should have never happened that happen on the platform, but we have a clear, crystal plan about how we're going to go about it. And we're hiring thousands of people to ensure that what happened on the platform doesn't happen again. And of course, we're collaborating with special counsel in Congress during these investigations, and we'll see what comes. But we're taking this very seriously, and we have a clear plan that both Mark and Cheryl outlined recently, and we're just going to go after it very aggressively.
Like you said, David, these platforms can be used for good, but they can just as easily be used for bad. I mean, when it comes to advertising, we're seeing blind spots in how Facebook developed its ad system, whether it's targeting racists or fake Russian accounts buying ads. These are things that Facebook has apologized for. But as you build out Messenger and build out advertising capabilities in Messenger, are you looking for ways that your platform can be abused, and are you taking steps to prevent it?
Well, we definitely can be better at this, and all of these things that are currently being raised are things that have made us realize that as we roll new things out, we need to continue being more thoughtful and try to overthink how the platform can be used in ways that it wasn't designed for. So going forward, that's definitely what we're going to do. And we tend to learn really quickly and fix things very quickly, and we've done it in the past, and I have no doubt we'll do it again this time.
That was Facebook VP of Messaging Platforms, David Marcus. Coming up, we hit the road with General Motors President Dan Ammann. Details on when GM may start to see a payoff from ride-sharing investments next. This is Bloomberg. Automation in the driver's seat. The buzz surrounding GM's self-driving plans have given the automaker a boost. Shares are up nearly 45% over the last year. A recent bullish call from Deutsche Bank anticipates a $30 billion business coming from GM self-driving and shared cars. I sat down with GM President Dan Ammann at the WSJ D Live conference and asked him about this analyst's call.
We actually think one of the big advantages we have today is that we have everything integrated under one roof. We have the advanced software engineering capability, the vehicle engineering and integration, the vehicle manufacturing piece, and what's allowing us to move as quickly as we are is actually having all that capability under one roof, which is giving us a real speed advantage, and that's the way that we'll be proceeding for the time.
So are you saying that spinning out the mobility business is not an option now? That's not something you'd consider?
All of our focus right now is on moving as fast as we can to get to commercial deployment of this technology in the safest way possible, and we believe the best way to do that is having all the capability under one roof.
So investors are finally starting to realize GM's ability to diversify, perhaps better so than other automakers, be it through electrification, ride sharing, self-driving cars. These things, though, are still fairly far out into the future. How do they all come together for you, and when?
Sure. So there's a lot of linkage. If you think about shared mobility, you think about autonomous, the intersection of those, we believe that all autonomous vehicles will be electric vehicles. So there's another intersection with electrification there. And it's back to this theme of having all of the capability that we have under one roof gives us a real advantage in how fast we're moving and how quickly we can bring this technology to fruition and get it deployed commercially.
You've made a big strategic investment in Lyft. How do you leverage what you've learned there, and what have you learned?
Sure. So we've had a very productive investment and relationship with Lyft. That has given us a lens and perspective into the ride-sharing business. And as I said, we think it's really at the very, very early stages of shared mobility, of ride-sharing, the intersection of autonomous. We're just at the beginning, and there's much more to come.
Uber has obviously had some struggles over the last several months. Do you see an opportunity there?
In what sense?
An opportunity to take advantage of perhaps a weekness that Uber might have now in the market.
I think we see ride-sharing overall, and the intersection of autonomous with ride-sharing is really, that's how the big opportunity comes together. Ride-sharing today accounts for 1/10% of all miles traveled. So we've still got 99.9% of the opportunity yet to come. So it's really early days. We think the autonomous technology that we will bring to fruition is key to unlocking a lot of that next set of opportunities.
What's the likelihood of you deepening your partnership with Lyft, or perhaps buying Lyft outright?
We have a lot of options in terms of how we can go to market. We can go to market, through our own network capability. We can go to market through different partnerships. So I'd say all options are open at this time.
So how do you decide which is the best? I mean, at what point do you, now that you've learned all of this, do you make a decision about how to move forward?
I'd say the closer the technology comes to being ready for commercial deployment, the more clarity will come around that picture.
When it comes to electrification, what battery cost will make them profitable?
We can talk about cost per kilowatt hour, but what really matters is to get the total vehicle profitable there. We do believe in an all-electric future at General Motors, and we believe in order for that to come to fruition over time, we need to get the costs of battery electric cars down to be in line or better than internal combustion engine cars. And that's the journey that we're on as a company to make sure we have the technical capability to solve that problem.
So how close are you to breaking even there?
We still have a little bit of work to go.
So I'm curious, when it comes to self-driving cars, GM has been able to move faster than I think a lot of people might have expected. When you say self-driving cars will be on the road in larger numbers in a few years, what do you mean by a few years?
I mean,
give us some more details on the timeline.
I can't really get more specific than that at this point in time, but the only thing I'd say is that things are moving really quickly. We believe we have an interesting approach in terms of having all the capability integrated in one place, and that's giving us an ability to move at speed. And we feel that we really have an obligation to bring this technology to commercial deployment as soon as possible because of the significant impact it can make on improving road safety.
That was GM President Dan Ammann. Coming up, Cisco CEO Chuck Robbins, hear his thoughts on the company's push into software and the cloud, plus his predecessor John Chambers' legacy as he plans to depart the company. And later, the movie business may be in a world of trouble, but Disney CEO Bob Iger is confident his portfolio of superhero films will pack a punch in coming months. This is Bloomberg. Welcome back to the best of Bloomberg Technology. I'm Emily Chang. The name of the game at Cisco the last few years has been transition from legacy hardware to software and services. That push has been led by Cisco CEO Chuck Robbins. I caught up with him at the WSJ-D conference in Laguna Beach and began by asking about Cisco's role in building the cities of tomorrow.
What we see happening all around the world, whether it's a company, a city, a country, technology really is at the heart of every strategy. We get that, and cities are no different. So whether it's meeting the objectives that cities have around revenue generation or solving some of the problems they have like parking or like lighting costs, et cetera, all of those now can be solved or achieved through the use of technology. Just a quick example, I mean, 20% of the lighting costs in the world or 20% of the energy costs come from lighting. And just by connecting these lights and controlling them more effectively, you can actually reduce that in the cities by 50 to 75%. So there's a tremendous opportunity out there, and the network is at the actual heart of making that happen.
So how do you turn that into a business? Like, when do we see this adding substantially to the bottom line?
Well, we're operating in 120 cities around the world right now, driving projects. We also have digitization agreements with actually 16 countries around the world where we're helping them with education and healthcare. And I think all of it continues to contribute to the transition that you talked about as you opened the show around us moving to more software. We have software platforms in addition to the network, and we have innovation going on across all of these areas in helping the cities actually achieve their objectives. So it's a long road with these businesses, but we think it's going to be a great business for us for a long time. You've
been pretty upfront saying Cisco's not going to stick its neck in the sand and ignore the changing realities of the industry. How would you rate your progress so far, making that transition to becoming the company that you think Cisco needs to be?
Well, I never think we're going fast enough, but I don't think any CEO does. You know, listen, when we started this, we had a couple of big objectives that we wanted to drive. One was this transition to software, and in 8 quarters, our deferred software revenue on our balance sheet doubled from $2.5 billion to $5 billion, so that's pretty significant. You know, we have over a $10 billion software business today. We wanted to also move towards more recurring revenue as a percentage of our business. In last quarter, we exited at 31%, and that was up 4 points from the prior year. And on a big business, that's a big move. In our product revenue, we had over $1 billion of that coming from recurring revenue, which was up 40% year over year, and it's the first time it ever been over $1 billion in a quarter, which represented 11% of the product revenue. So I think we've made a lot of progress there, and we have massive innovation that we've been working on in our core franchises, which was another key objective for us.
When will we see software and services revenue become the driving force of growth for the top line?
Well, I think that if you look right now at where we're headed, I think they are going to be the drivers of growth over the next few years, particularly if you look at the launch that we did this summer. Because one of the things we wanted to do was really re-energize our core franchises and actually bring a software model to our core franchises. And we did that this summer. We launched the very early phases of what we call intuitive networking, which is intent-based networking, which is actually a category. And what it really allows you to do is to take the priorities of your business and drive them through to how you run your infrastructure, as well as drive context out of the infrastructure through analytics. So we've rewritten all of our software. We've got analytics capabilities coming out of every aspect of our technology. And we actually launched a subscription business on top of our core switching platforms, which people didn't think we could do, and we're having really good uptake on that.
You've been aggressive on M&A on a smaller scale. Are you open to larger for-revenue acquisitions?
Well, we're open to any acquisition that aligns strategically with where we need to go, whether they're small, large, mid-size, and I've said that repeatedly. It's you know, when we think about innovation, we spend a lot of money on internal R&D, and we really wanted to refocus some of that into our core, which we've done. The M&A engine, I think we've bought somewhere between 15 and 20 companies since I became CEO. We're also driving a lot of really deep strategic partnerships, like what we've done with Apple, what we've done with Inspur, what we've done with Rockwell, and you'll see more and more partnerships coming from us. And one other interesting aspect that we've really begun to implement is co-development, co-innovating with our customers in a very iterative way. And so we'll continue to use all of those depending on what we need.
John Chambers, who was the CEO for many decades before you, will be stepping down from the board at the end of this year. Many of the executives that he hired have also left the company. What does that kind of a sea change mean? What does that signify?
Well, I think, first of all, John was, this was all part of his plan, and he's got so many things he's off doing now. He's into startups and wants to help, drive the startup capacity in the United States. So I think he's going to do great things. But if you look at the leadership team that we put in place, we really just needed to ensure that we had the leadership team that really bought into the vision of where we wanted to take the company. I think we have that today, and we're executing really well.
So the Supreme Court just decided to hear Microsoft's case against the DOJ over whether companies can be forced to hand over information on their customers stored on servers outside of the United States. Cisco has backed Microsoft when it comes to this particular case. What are your biggest concerns? I mean, do you worry this could set a precedent?
Well, I don't worry so much about a precedent. My view is the following. Most of these are policy issues. And what I think are that we do support Microsoft in this case, and we believe that the countries need to define what the policies are. And in fact, in this case, we believe the countries that are involved actually need to figure out what are the cross-border data, privacy issues, and how are we going to deal with them. The technology can be deployed in whatever way aligns with the policy, but we've always just viewed this as a policy issue that the governments need to decide.
The tech industry has made some effort to bridge the gap with Washington, and I'm curious, in a Silicon Valley that is largely anti-Trump, have you seen the efforts to engage with the administration actually pay off?
Well, I think if you look at the priorities that are coming out of Washington from a business perspective, we remain very active in Congress. We remain very active on tax reform. We remain very active on discussions around high-skilled immigration, all the things that matter. And there's still, there's tremendous progress. If you look at what's happened with the early framework for tax reform and what we've seen even happen this week, I think they're making progress. And
so
I think
you're happy with what you see?
Well, I'm happy with the business imperatives that they're trying to drive in Washington, absolutely.
What are you unhappy with?
Well, my 16-year-old's latest grades. There's a lot of things to be unhappy about. I think that in Washington, you just have to, it's always a dynamic place. And there's obviously lots of politics, and there's, in my view, more discussion about things that divide us than things that unify us. And I think that, but again, with the approach that was taken on trying to get this process for corporate tax reform done, it was done across the House, it was done across, the Senate, as well as the executive branch, and I think that was that's promising. So we're hopeful.
That was Cisco CEO Chuck Robbins. Well, Netflix reported a blockbuster third quarter, the company blowing past domestic and international subscriber growth targets and beating on revenue. Netflix added 6.3 million subscribers, nearly 4.5 million overseas. Surpassing expected subscriber growth is an encouraging sign for investors, since Netflix recently announced its first price hike since 2015. Meantime, Amazon announced it will sever ties with Harvey Weinstein's former production company. Weinstein was fired after a litany of sexual harassment allegations against him. Amazon had ordered 2 seasons of a high-profile project produced out by the embattled production company starring Robert De Niro and Julianne Moore. That show will no longer be made. And in further developments, Roy Price resigned as the head of Amazon's movie and TV studio after allegations of sexual harassment. Amazon Studios' chief operating officer, Albert Chang, will oversee the studio while Amazon searches for Price's replacement. Price led the e-commerce giant's push into TV and movie production with an estimated budget of $4.5 billion in 2017. Price hasn't responded to a request for comment. Well, after the worst summer box office for Hollywood in a decade, Disney CEO Bob Iger has high hopes for his company's fall releases. That includes the new Thor film. So why is Iger so confident of a box office turnaround? Bloomberg's LA Bureau Chief Chris Palmieri joined us this week to talk about the importance of this film.
It's important, and not just to Disney, the whole industry. We've been writing, as you said, for the past few months about Hollywood's big disappointments, and the industry's down about 5% this year. But it looks like things could turn around a bit in the last quarter, in large part due to Disney. The new Thor looks pretty good. They have a new Pixar movie coming out, and of course Star Wars in December, and that could get a lot more people into theaters.
So what are box office projections here?
Thor looks like it's going to open about 105 million and do at least 270 million. Its domestic run. That'll make it, one of the top 10 movies of the year. The other two movies will both be over 200 million. Star Wars is, Rogue One did over $1 billion, and so everyone expects the latest Star Wars sequel to do more than that.
If these sequels and revivals haven't been doing well, why do they keep making them?
Because when they do well, they make a lot of money. That's the reason. And so I asked Bob Iger about this, how do you keep these things fresh? And he said it's just, a lot of work in new stories, new places for the heroes to go, new characters. And, in the case of Thor, I saw it, it's a funny movie. So there was actually kind of a change in tone from the past. There's a lot more humor in this, which people seem to respond to in these superhero movies these days.
We actually do have a chart showing what movie theater stocks, there you can see, have tumbled over the last year. In terms of keeping things fresh, one of the things that's interesting is the Marvel Comics, the print edition. They've tried to increase diversity. Thor is now a woman. Iron Man is a black woman from MIT and more. When will we see that kind of diversity translate on screen?
You're starting to see it. There were some definitely new characters. There's a big woman star, Cate Blanchett, in the new movie, and you're going to see Black Panther, Marvel superhero, directed by African-American director as well next year. So, it's starting to work. It's obviously a big issue in Hollywood these days, diversity of all kinds, and you're going to start to see it, I think, reflect a lot more in the product as well.
What would a hit mean for the film business?
Well, right now we're just trying to get back to even for the year. Last year was a record year, so if these three Disney movies do well, there's another Warner Brothers film, Justice League, coming out. We could be back to break even. That will at least take away this feeling that people aren't going to movies anymore.
Coming up, he co-founded PayPal, and now he's got his sights on ending predatory lending. My exclusive interview with Max Levchin is next. And a reminder, all episodes of Bloomberg Tech are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV, weekdays 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. This is Bloomberg. Time Warner's CNN has received a waiver allowing routine drone flights above crowds. It is a milestone for the industry seeking to use the remote-controlled devices for everything from insurance inspections to covering news. This approval is the first time the U.S. government agency has granted a waiver for unlimited flights over people. Previous exemptions allowed flights of drones over people in closed set operations and only when tethered with a maximum height of 21 feet. Well, this week, top business and tech leaders gathered at the Wall Street Journal D-Live conference in Laguna Beach, California. Among them, Affirm founder and CEO Max Levchin. Before entering the FinTech lending space, Levchin co-founded PayPal. In my exclusive interview with Levchin, I began by asking about the trends he's seeing in the lending arena now. Take a listen.
I think we're just about ready to enter the consolidation phase of this new market where companies that are good at managing risk, smart about underwriting, smart at reserving, and are set up for long-term success are going to start picking up the stragglers, the ones that don't have the capital, don't have the management teams, aren't ready to take on both the risk management demands and the regulatory demands, frankly, of the space.
So what do you see happening when it comes to predatory lending, for example?
Well, I think the promise of FinTech, the thing that we're all really have come here to do in one way is to get rid of predatory lending. It's to shine a spotlight of what is the right and the wrong way of doing this, to bring more access to credit to those that are traditionally excluded, pushed out by the players into the darker reaches of pawn shops and pay to lenders. So I think the opportunity is still there, and we're all working on it very hard. But I would say the dent that's been made by the industry so far is fairly small. We think we're doing our part and then some, but there's a lot of people who have no access to credit whatsoever.
So talk to us about the newest developments at Affirm and how you guys are trying to combat some of these trends.
So Affirm has been scaling very steadily over the last 5-6 years that we've been around, and we're really focused on this idea of honest finance, being able to deliver a loan product to the consumer that is uniquely tailored to the purchase they're trying to make with very, very transparent pricing, something that we can commit to, that will not change, that it will be no hidden fees or interest rate changes or any of the sort of plagues that that hurt consumers, and really give the industry a bad name, deservedly in many ways. So we've just been working on that for a prolonged period of time, very focused, and have picked up a lot of very happy customers. Our NPS has been hovering well north of 80, which, for comparison, the majority of traditional banks have a negative NPS score. So it's a pretty accomplishment I'm proud of. One of the big things that we've been able to show at this point empirically with real data is that we open our credit access. We approve more than 30% more people than a traditional financial institution. So we are actively bringing credit access to audiences that are traditionally excluded. And I think that's really the best way of doing it. Create responsible vehicles, lend money to those that can't afford to borrow it, but provide guidance and guardrails, frankly, to not overextend people, not push them into a cycle of debt.
The Equifax hack has been in the spotlight. Hundreds of millions of people having their private information stolen. You were just asked on stage, should Equifax even exist? You said credit bureaus should exist, but how do we avoid risks like this?
I think it's the inevitable reality that many traditional players have just not yet come to full terms with. Security is no longer optional. It used to be the joke in the security industry that cryptography and computing security is a kind of insurance policy you only want to buy the day after your house burns down. And if Equifax does anything for anyone with this latest sort of crazy incident, is to sound a loud enough alarm that teaches everyone else in the industry, do yourself and your customers a favor, encrypt your data, have real security practices. And we should spend a lot of our time pointing out just how easy it is to fix that problem. We did not have to have that.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on Bitcoin. Jamie Dimon says Bitcoin is a fraud. How are you thinking about Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies? What is their future?
So I think it's a developing story in a sense that from a skeptical perspective, it is a little bit of a hammer looking for nails. Every time somebody pitches me a really cool new cryptocurrency-based company, the first test I apply, I say, well, can this be done without Bitcoin, without Ethereum? And 9 out of 10 times the answer is, yeah, it's really kind of unnecessary to bring cryptocurrency into it. Having said that, the promise of cryptocurrency, and especially the distributed ledger, the idea of inexpensively creating fully distributed, verifiable trust, is really powerful. And I believe we will converge on concepts and companies and fundamental improvements to our society through the usage of the blockchain. I'm just not sure exactly what they are yet.
My exclusive interview there with Affirm CEO and PayPal co-founder Max Levchin. Coming up, Pinterest is introducing a new way for small and medium-sized businesses to reach the masses. We catch up with Pinterest president Tim Kendall next. And if you like Bloomberg News, check us out on the radio. You can listen on the Bloomberg Radio app, Bloomberg.com, and in the U.S. on SiriusXM. This is Bloomberg. Pinterest is hoping to reel in the advertisers. The social network is introducing a new way for small and medium-sized businesses to reach the masses. The new tools will be found in the Pinterest Ads Manager and will allow businesses to target customers searching for potential products. Pinterest President Tim Kendall joined us in the studio to explain the new move.
People use Pinterest to plan. And since they're planning, it's a really awesome time for businesses to connect with the consumer while they're in the early part of the buying process. So what we're announcing today is an ability for small businesses to reach people on Pinterest while they're searching.
So when they're searching, there is some sort of intent there. And I know you worked at Facebook for many years. Yep. Do you think that these Pinterest ads will be more effective at actually getting people to buy stuff than your typical Facebook ad, for example?
Well, what we see when people search on Pinterest is they know notionally what they want. Like they're looking for an L-shaped couch or they're looking for a bedside table, but they don't know what brand they want to buy it from. And that's why it's such a unique and optimal point for an advertiser to get in front of that consumer, because they know what they want, but they don't know who they want it from. And so for businesses, especially small businesses who have to acquire new customers to grow and have to find people to buy their product who've never heard of them. It's an awesome time to get in front of them. So if you're searching for, like I said, an L-shaped couch or a baby stroller, we can now let a small business who sells those products get in front of new people.
So how much could this boost Pinterest's revenue potential?
Well, so small and medium-sized business is now our fastest growing segment. And some people do the little trick of law of small numbers. In this case, it's a big number and it's growing the fastest. But I think Pinterest, because we're strong in home, beauty, style, and food, these are categories where small businesses thrive. There are lots of new entrants. People want selection. And so because Pinterest is strong in these categories, it's a natural place for small businesses to be.
So what can you tell us about trends in advertising revenue at large at Pinterest?
So up, in the correct direction. They're growing. The trajectory is great, and we're really pleased with it.
So one of the weaknesses, as we were talking about earlier on the show, with self-service advertising is the potential for abuse, and we've seen this with the Russian meddling on Facebook's platform, trying to swing the election. How do you make sure that this kind of thing doesn't happen on Pinterest?
Well, in terms of our ad review, we do three things. First of all, every single ad on Pinterest has been reviewed by a human. Every single one. The second thing we do is
Can you keep that up as you scale?
I believe we can, yeah. The second thing we do is we use technology to look for fraudulent ads and spammy ads. And then we also have, and other people do this too, we have human eval to check that technology and continue to provide a constant feedback loop to that technology so it keeps getting better and learns.
So, there was a report in the Washington Post that Russian content did end up on Pinterest. Your head of policy responded to this, said you're looking into it, said it appears that it came from Facebook. But what more can you tell us about what happened there and what measures you're taking?
Well, look, that content has been rampant across the internet, and our pinners saw that content. It's convincing content. It doesn't look fake, and in some instances, they saved it into Pinterest. And when we saw it, we removed it.
In general, what do you think is the responsibility of these platforms?
Well, I think when we see that content, we have an obligation to remove it.
So,
and so we're trying to stay in line with that principle.
When it comes to advertising in general, Pinterest is always on the list of the potential companies who could go out of the gate and hit the public markets. Does this bring you any closer to an IPO?
I mean, we don't have any plans for an IPO. We're super focused on making the product better for our users and growing the business.
And what can you tell us about demographic trends among users? I mean, a lot of people think women use Pinterest mostly. Is that true?
No. So men, fastest growing segment, also not playing the trick of small numbers there.
So how big?
Well, 40% of signups today are men.
Okay.
So it's significant.
And where do you see this going? I mean, you're in charge of building the business. Beyond these new ad features, sort of what's next?
I think that we want to do for discovery what Google did for search. That is a huge opportunity. If we're the service on everyone's phone that they use to discover what they want to eat, what they want to wear, where they want to live, where they want to travel, it's a gigantic business. It's also just a gigantic service for everyone to use and improve their lives.
That was Pinterest President Tim Kendall. And that does it for this edition of Bloomberg Technology, the best of Bloomberg Technology. We will bring you all the latest in tech throughout the week. Tune in each day, 5 p.m. in New York, 2 p.m. in San Francisco. And remember, all episodes of Bloomberg Tech are live streaming on Twitter. Check us out at Bloomberg Tech TV weekdays. That's all for now. This is Bloomberg.